I am literally sitting here, crippled with anxiety, overwhelmed by depression, suffocating in an eating disorder. And your solution is to just continue on the way that things have been going? No, 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 no. So today I would like to talk about the traumatic boot camp I went to when I was 23 years old, otherwise known as Teen Challenge. Listen, if you or anyone else that you know is considering going to one of these facilities, you might want to watch this video first. We are talking a crisis center with no therapists, no counselors, no medication given, no medication allowed, period, actively engaging and shunning people who were on restriction for days at a time. Extreme punishments, such as having to dig holes only to fill it all back in after you're done digging it. Insane sexism against the females. Extremely menial tasks that were supposed to bring you closer to God, like sweeping the entire parking lot by yourself for days at a time. And my personal favorite, no letters or phone calls with your parents or anyone from the outside world. So let's get into it. So I am 23 years old and I have just gotten out of my 5th or 6th rehab center. I'm an IV drug user and I'm terrified of relapsing again because that's what I do. I go into treatment for 28 days. I do amazing. As soon as I'm home for a little while, I get super depressed. I get super anxious. I feel like I have no hope. I feel like I'm going to kill myself. And so the only thing I know that will sustain my life at least a little bit longer is using. And I just don't want to feel like that anymore. So my parents, myself, and my aunt are all looking into aftercare for me to help me to stay clean. I am willing to do just about anything at this point. So when Teen Challenge gets presented to me, it's as a Christian year-long program. I'm not a stranger to Christian facilities. I went to a Christian high school. I've gone to church pretty much my whole life. It's not a huge burden on my family to put me into it. So I'm in. Whenever we get there, they present all of the curriculum. It's made to seem like it's a spiritual school, a spiritual center where people become closer to God and overcome addiction. The way they present it is that we're in class the majority of the day. We'll do chores to keep the facility clean in the evening time, and then we'll have church at night. I have orientation with 2 other girls who are coming into the group, which is holding about 30 to 40 other women at this point. My aunt pays them the $1,000. She hugs me goodbye and they drive off. And here I am, about to be in for a very rude awakening. The first thing I notice is the backyard. So this giant farmhouse that looks like it came directly out of 27 Kids and Counting is sitting on this flat expanse of dirt that looks like it goes on for at least 2 football fields. The backyard is very flat and very long. And as I look out at it, I notice that there's all these sinkholes in it. So I asked the girl who's showing me around, why are there so many sinkholes? And that's when I find out it's from other girls who had to dig holes as punishments and then fill them back in. So the entire backyard is now filled with what has to be hundreds of sinkholes. Somebody there saw that Shia LaBeouf movie and decided, I know, let's make it worse and not only have them dig it, but have them fill them back in too. Second thing I notice are the sleeping quarters. Like I said, this is a giant looking farmhouse. And so everyone is sleeping in the attic area of this farmhouse, which just is one huge expanse. There are no walls. There is just an entire attic of bunk beds. There is 1 bathroom in the corner that holds about 3 stalls and 3 showers. Every night you are timed in your shower. You take a 3-minute shower, which includes scrubbing it down after you're done. If you have long hair like I did at the time, good fucking luck. Because there's no staff, girls are patrolling each other. They really indoctrinate you with, if you see someone sinning and you do not say anything, that sin becomes yours, and then you are held responsible for that sin. So there is a lot of snitching going on. You really don't feel safe even amongst your fellow peers. It's very much an individual program, and I feel that almost immediately. It feels incredibly lonely pretty much from day one. Because there is essentially no staff, the girls are responsible for meals and running the facility. Also in our building is 1 administrative woman, along with 3 techs, which are women who have previously graduated from Teen Challenge. One of the techs will just read over our booklet each day where we'll answer some questions. There's no spiritual teachings. All they're doing is reading directly out of a pamphlet. And then we go on to our 6 hours of daily chores. Because we are constantly cleaning, this place is immaculate, but you cannot not be working. So even if there's nothing to clean, you still have to sit there and wash the wall, which was initially my job whenever I first got there. I remember seeing how many times I could write "help me" on the wall with my water sponge before it evaporated. I think I got up to 17 times. It would be different if there were actually things to do and things to work on, which there were. There was construction going around all throughout the campus, but guess who got to do that construction? The boys. The girls had to stay inside and do the female jobs, while the guys got to go around constructing new buildings, new barns, new fences. They got to mow the grass, while the girls did laundry and wiped the walls down. Women were just way too distracting for the men. We could not work on the same things that they were working on. Even when we went to chapel, the women had to sit behind the men, again, because we're too much of a distraction. So they always sat in the front row and we were always behind them. Always. With our long skirts and our long hair, we sit very subdued, very quietly, very mindfully behind the men. Speaking of the boys, if they were around, doing their man jobs, you were forced to look down at the ground. You could not look at them, definitely no eye contact with them, or you would get a restriction. You looked down at the ground, you did not look at them. Even if they were yards away, your eyes are on the ground. And you best believe if one of your peers saw you looking, you would get snitched on. But when I tell you I followed all of these rules, dude. I was so afraid of relapsing. I so wanted a new life that I was
90
willing to
days.
do whatever someone told me to do. I had never tried this before. I'm going to try it. I just want my life back, like if this is what I have to do to get it, then I'm going to fucking do it. As weird as it is, I'm going to do it. So mind you, I have been in rehab for the past, which means I am now on a stable amount of medication. Whenever I come into Teen Challenge is when I realize that I can no longer take medication. They don't have a nurse that will give them out. No one is allowed to take any sort of medication. There's no staff. So around day 4 and 5, I am having to withdraw off of my psychiatric medication. I'm taking medication for ADHD and depression. I just remember myself sitting there and praying and journaling and praying and journaling and reading the Bible and praying like, please let this work. Please let this work. Please. This seems like a good a time as any to say that I also came in with a very severe eating disorder. Teen Challenge claimed to be multi-diagnosis. They claim to treat multiple addictions. I am severely bulimic. We are talking drinking Clorox in order to make myself vomit daily. Okay, this is a daily problem and one that I have gone to treatment for just as much as my drug addiction. What is their solution to this? There's no staff, let alone a dietitian. So what Teen Challenge does is there is a group of girls assigned to kitchen duty. They are in charge of making whatever the church has donated for that month. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's spam. Teen Challenge is run off of donations, so it's all dependent on what people have given. And it's usually expired. So you go through the line and you are allowed to say what you don't want. But if you pick something to be put on your tray, you have to eat it in its entirety. If you do not finish your plate, everyone is forced to sit in the cafeteria until you do. No one can leave until everyone's plate is empty. If you say they scoop too much onto your plate, that's complaining. And complaining gets you a restriction. No exceptions. That's the God-given cure, folks. God. So we already know I have a list of restrictions solely from my dietary problems. I have been doing my best to fit in because, mind you, in the back of my head, I am going to be here for an entire year. If I don't learn the ropes eventually, I am going to suffer here for what seems like an eternity. When you're young, a year seems like forever. I am going to be living in this place for so long, and that is constantly in the back of my mind. I have to fit in. I have to learn the ropes. I have to get this. I have to succeed. My parents paid too much money for me to back out in the first month. Like, I'm not trying to give up. I want this. I really, really want it. So I go into the office of the only administrative lady that works there. She's given a bunch of paper slips from all the times my peers have snitched on me. And we go over all of the things I've done wrong throughout the course of the first week. However, because I'm new, I will not receive punishments for this quite yet. Obviously, I have not finished my plate, and all the girls in the cafeteria have gotten out their little slips of paper and written down every time I didn't finish the food on my plate. Another restriction I have is complaining. For example, you cannot request something different to eat because that's considered complaining. You cannot mention the temperature inside. That is considered complaining. There was one day I walked upstairs and said, "It's cold up in here." And I received 7 restrictions from 7 different girls who wrote in slips on me for complaining. You really don't realize how often you complain until everyone around you is docking you every single time you say anything that's remotely negative. So I have a lot of restrictions just based off of things that I've said. Obviously, swearing, I've had a few swear words, nothing too crazy. The craziness comes from seeing the punishments that other people have received for receiving the same restrictions that I did. And this is the first time that I really see how severe the punishments can be. For the very first time, I see what is referred to as a talking fast. One of the big rules here at Teen Challenge is that you are not allowed to talk about your past. You cannot discuss your addictions. You cannot discuss why you are here. You cannot discuss what brought you here. The only thing that you can discuss with your fellow peers is the church service that day and things that glorify God. There is no reminiscing about anything that you did in your past life. You only talk about what is happening in the moment. Apparently, one of the girls was talking about what she struggled with in her addiction, and so naturally, someone brought it to the attention of the administrator. This girl is now put on a week-long talking fast, which means, as I discussed in the beginning of the video, none of the girls in the facility are allowed to look at this girl, are allowed to talk to this girl, are allowed to gesture towards her, are allowed to write notes to her, because that would put that person at risk of being on a talking fast as well. Multiple girls at a time are put on these fasts, and throughout the week, I just see them begin to completely dissolve into the walls. When the only people you're around are shunning you, that has a psychological effect on you. And it lasts the entire week. Like, oh my, imagine being in a facility where you are completely isolated from the outside world and no one in that facility will even acknowledge your presence. You're already in there because you're struggling. This is a voluntary program of people who openly are asking for help. These are not criminals. These aren't people who have been thrown in here by a judge or their family. These are young women who are actively seeking help. And to be in a facility trying to overcome trauma that you're not even allowed to talk about and work through is just beyond me. Another girl's punishment is to sweep the driveway all day long for 7 days a week. She comes in for meals and she comes in to go to sleep. If she's not eating or she's not sleeping, she is out there sweeping the driveway. When I tell you that I am terrified of having one of these punishments happen to me, bitch, I'm fucking terrified. Because they happen to everyone. You are constantly around the other girls and they are constantly monitoring you. It's so easy to slip up and say, oh, I used to do this. Oh, I used to do that. It completely prevents you from having any sort of meaningful relationships with the people you're living with because you can't talk about anything other than the church service that day. The loneliness that you feel here, the loneliness that I felt here, you're already young and impressionable and now you're fucking trapped. The one thing that I keep holding out hope for is the end of the first month, because that's whenever my orientation period ends and I can finally start sending letters. I still can't have any phone calls, but I can at least write monitored letters to my family. Just getting like, you're so lonely that just the thought of receiving one letter from my parents is what pushed me to get to the end of that first month. The whole month, I had been making little cartoons and little letters, Father's Day cards, Christmas cards, birthday cards, like all by hand, so that way I could eventually send them. So this whole time, I've just been working on making letters, even though I can't send them yet. It's all that I have, just the thought of communicating again. Because not only is there no communication with people that you know, there's no communication with the outside world. We cannot watch TV, we cannot watch movies, we can't even watch the news. The only thing we get is once a week, if we've been good, we'll get one of those Christian approved movie nights where we watch one of those cheese ball movies where the Christian is always right in the end, like God's Not Dead or, you know what I'm talking about, one of those movies. But I digress because it's time for my monthly assessment. I finally am going to have the ability to send and receive letters. I believe phone calls are a 3-month privilege, and even for girls who have been here for 9 months, they still only get one 7-minute phone call a week. And it's monitored. So not only are your letters screened, but your phone calls are monitored the entire time. And the only people you're allowed to communicate with are your immediate family. No grandparents, no aunts and uncles, parents and siblings, that's it. But I am so fucking ready for this, all right? This is all I've been working towards. I go in the office, I sit down, I am ready to finally be able to receive letters. So anyways, I'm sitting in my assessment, naturally a stack of papers about this high from all the snitches. And the only thing I really remember the administrator woman saying, I don't even remember her name anymore. She says, because I'm losing a significant amount of weight, it's becoming a problem because I am so uncomfortable in my surroundings. It's starting to become an issue. And so she says something along the lines of, normally, girls are starting to get stronger at this point, and all I see is you becoming weaker, which was true. This was a very true observation that she had. All right, I was fucking suffering, but I was trying, bro. I was legitimately trying, but I was getting weaker. This place was not strengthening me at all. It was breaking me. And so I give her a lot of credit for seeing that. What I don't give her credit for is how she chose to fix this problem. And that was by placing me on another month-long orientation hold. I just remember sitting there like, what? Like, I am literally sitting here, crippled with anxiety, overwhelmed by depression, suffocating in an eating disorder. And your solution is to just continue on the way that things have been going? No. And for the first time, I pull the I want to go home card. And that's when shit really hits the fan. Stick around for part 2. Subscribe!